Well, hi everybody, and welcome to another CMYK Sabbath Gathering. My name is Matt, and we as a church community believe it's important for us to take a moment and to pause and rest from our normal routine. Typically we meet on Sundays at 5 at the Billings Open Studio, and this Sunday we thought we'd do something where we just take the whole day to enjoy creation, enjoy relationships, and remember that our God is up to something in our lives. And so this is going to be a real truncated service, if you will. And so we want to invite you wherever you are and whoever you're with to take these next few moments, read some scripture together, pray with us, and think about some things that we think really matter. And to kick things off, we're going to spend some time reflecting on some texts in the scripture. So I want to invite you to read these, reflect on them, and we'll come back. One of the great things about this last couple years of my life has been the ability to engage myself more and more in the music community here in Billings. There's all these great local songwriters and bands that I've been able to come alongside and help record along with that to help produce their music. And the role of the producer is someone that kind of, looks at the song, hears things and tries to push things forward and tries to make it the best that it can be and make sure that the song is communicating the things that they want communicated as a band. And so these last couple of weeks I've been able to work with one of what I consider to be the greatest musicians here in Billings, Montana. On top of that, he's one of my really, really good friends. And so it's been fun for him to bring all of these different songs and ideas forward and us just to try different things and, let's think about this and all of that. And he brought this one song forward that was really cool. It had this really complex rhythm and musically it was just really, really interesting. But then when you looked at the lyrics and what he was trying to communicate, what he had put his heart into lyrically, it didn't feel like the two things were matching up for me. And so I just, as the producer, thought, hey, let's try this. And so we slowed the song down a little bit. We tried some different things musically and wasn't too sure about it in the beginning, but decided to just try it. It was just an idea. And so he goes into it and it was just apparent. Before he even got through the first verse, this is the way the song was supposed to be played. It was just a completely different song and it was great. It was beautiful. And so a couple nights ago, I'm up at the VIG and he's performing these songs and he gets to this song that I had this one idea on. And he starts to perform it and there was something in me that wanted to rise up. In fact, I wanted to stand up on the table in the middle of the VIG and just make sure that everybody in that restaurant knew I was the one that had the idea to slow it down, that this somehow was now my song. It was my great idea because I did this. And so I'm thinking about that and I realize, how bad is that of me? Because the truth is, this guy has spent hour upon hour upon hour pouring over the lyrics, pouring over the music, putting his heart into these things and this idea. He's put his life into this song. And me, I put like 3 minutes into it. I had one idea and it just so happened out of all the other bad ideas, this one idea that I had actually worked. I think there's something in all of us that really desires to get credit, to get glory for things, that even if we had a small little part in it, maybe even if we had no little part in it, we just someday, somewhere had the idea about it, and then someone else does it, there's something in us that goes, that was my idea, or I thought about that too. We just love this thought that we deserve the credit for anything and everything that we think we can grab onto. When it comes to the Jewish tradition, they tell the story of creation in a really interesting way. They say that God was hovering over the waters. He was hovering over the void, and he begins to speak things into creation. And so some of us has read it. When it comes to Genesis 1, it's that God begins to speak, and he creates this, and he calls that good, and it's day 1. And then he goes to day 2, and he speaks another thing into creation, and then he says it's good, and he moves on, day 3, and he begins to create and create and create. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of creation where God is filling what was once formless and void. He's doing all the work. And then we find the 6th day take place. And many of us know it's on the 6th day that we see God's creation come to this point where he creates Adam and Eve. It's an amazing moment. It's where we came from, according to the Jewish tradition. And what's really fascinating about this is that Adam and Eve, they show up to something that's already been created. In other words, they don't wake up and it's like, this place is pretty empty and void. We should probably get to work and make some things happen. No, they wake up to something that God has already been creating all the way up to this point. And then what's really crazy, what's really radical, is God's next step and form of instruction for them the very next day is this: everybody's just going to rest. Everybody's just going to hang out. And everybody's just going to remember, I did all of this. It's a really interesting thought. Because all of us have this same tendency to look at what's going on around us and to start to claim credit for all of our work, all of the effort that we've put into things. And it's like God, from the very beginning, has spoken this: hey, I'm up to something, I'm working, and I think it's important for you to just stop and recognize this is my creation. You see, from the very beginning, this is what this 7th day of rest has been about. This is what this Sabbath is about. All of us have the tendency to work really hard, to create, to make, to do all of these different things, and that's not bad. But we need to recognize that we as human beings and we as creation show up to what God has already been up to. In other words, we stop and we pause and we rest today because it's important for us to see that all of the things that we can be anxious about, all of the things that we can be worried about, we need to understand that God has already been at work. That's where we come from, and that's where we continue to rest and to stay. God, you are here, you are creating, and you are making. So for some of us, we look at these relationships around us and we feel like, man, I just got to fix this. I got to change that. I got to do this and I got to do that. Okay, that's fine to work on relationships. It's fine to move things forward. But it's also really important to just stop and recognize that God is already at work in the life of that person. And maybe more important than you trying to control and manipulate and fix everything, the most important thing you can do today is to just stop and go, God, you're up to something, you're doing something, you're creating, and just like Adam and Eve, I'm waking up to what you've already done. It's so important for us. Maybe when it comes to something that we're trying to move forward in the world, it's a brokenness, a piece that we wish we could bring and make things better. Okay, that's good, but it's also really important to just stop and recognize that God is up to the same thing of fixing the brokenness in our world. And so He's at work. What is He doing? And let's stop and just celebrate that. It's not our work. It's like we have this one teeny idea and God's up to something that spans all of history. Let's celebrate that. And even as a church, I think it's important for us to stop and pause, because this thing of church can be coming together on a Sunday and doing all of these religious things that, yes, in their essence are good, but at the end of the day, this is what God is creating. This whole CMYK experiment is something that we believe God is up to in Billings, Montana. And so if He's not creating and a part of it, then we're just getting together to sing some songs and listen to a talk, maybe sometimes a really boring talk. But we believe that this is what God has been creating from the beginning. He's been doing something here in Billings that a lot of other churches and a lot of other people have been a part of. And we as CMYK simply show up and join what He's been creating. It's the 7th day. We stop, we pause, and we rest. And so today, As so many of us can come into environments and spaces like this, talk about God, and feel like, man, we're not enough, we're not there yet, I need to work harder, I need to do this. As so many of us can work hard to try and take credit for all of these different things going on in our world and in our lives, we think it's important to just stop, to pause, and to rest. And to help us do this, I've asked some of the CMYK musicians to play a song. It's by a band called Sleeping at Last, and it's simply titled this, You Are Enough. And I hope you pay attention to the lyrics, because the idea of this song is this is what God would be communicating to you today. Your worth is not found in how much you accomplish. Your worth is not found in what you can take credit for and stand up on the table in the VIG and say, this was my idea and I did this or I did that. No, your worth is simply found in this. God knows you, He sees you, He loves you, and He has given everything so that you would understand you are enough. So you can stop, you can pause, and you can rest in His creation.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. When we woke up, the world was figured out. Beyond the beauty that we dreamt about, this brilliant light is brighter than we've known. Without our darkness to prove it so, still we can't help but to examine it, to add our question marks and periods. At the foot of our bed we found an envelope. You're enough, you're enough, you're enough, you are enough. These little words, somehow they're changing us. You're enough, you are enough. So let our shadows fall away like dust. When we grew up, our shadows grew up too. They're just old ghosts that we grow attached to. The tragic flaw is that they hide the truth. That you're enough, you're enough, you're enough. I promise you're enough, you're enough, you're enough. I promise you're enough, you're enough, you're enough. I promise you. You're enough, you're enough, you're enough, you are enough. These little words, somehow they're changing us. You're enough, you are enough. So let our shadows fall away like dust. You're enough, you are enough. These little words, somehow they're changing us. You're enough, you are enough. So let our shadows fall away like dust. You're enough, you are enough. These little words, somehow they're changing us. You're enough, you are enough. So let our shadows fall away like dust.
So, wherever you are, and whatever's going on, can we do the most important thing? And that is to recognize that God has already been at work and that God is already up to something. He's already created. And so maybe you're with some friends and family and you would go for a walk, or you would just spend some time talking about what has God already been creating. Okay, yes, what do you hope to create? What do you hope to make? And yeah, be able to maybe take some credit for an idea here or there, but what is God up to relationally? What is God up to in your work life? What is God up to in your spiritual life? That you would just understand, God, we're so grateful that you showed up before we even were aware of you. We hope you guys have a great week, and we hope that if there's anything that we can do for you, that you would get a hold of us. You can go to CMYKchurch.com and figure out everything that's going on within the community. You can also choose to give there. I just want to continue to say thank you to those of you that choose to believe that you have enough in the way that you give financially to this community, in the way that you give of your time and energy every Sunday, making these gatherings take place. This is such a joy to see what God is doing and what God is creating. And so have a great day of rest, and we'll see you back at the Billings Open Studio on Sunday at 5.